Get set, because it's time to go with the It's 420 Somewhere podcast. With your host with the most, the man voted most likely to smoke out with a Yeti, Mr. Brian Brown. Mr. Brian Brown. Now sit back and relax, because it's time to go live across the world. Because it's 420 Somewhere.
What's up, guys? Welcome to It's 420 Somewhere podcast. I'm your host, Brian Brown, your host with the most, apparently. I'm your host, Brian Brown, and what this is, what you stumbled into, is the craziest, the wildest, the wackiest 420 countdown show in the history of 420 countdown shows on YouTube at 420, guys. Very niche. We got a very niche audience here. Now, big shout out to everyone watching today, guys. The Kingman crew, all the usual suspects. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thanks for tuning in. But what do? We get into a whole mess of trouble in the meantime as we're counting down to 420, guys. We're talking Movie Monday. We're talking Paranormal Tuesday. How did you guys like the Atlantis interview yesterday? Oh man, what was David Edward? Is that his name? Yeah, David Edward. Great guy, man. Very interesting. I think he got it. I mean, if I'm gonna give my honest opinion, a lot of what he said makes a lot of sense, guys. If you didn't check out that interview, check it out. Yesterday, you can check it out in our archives over at thedailydank.com or right here on YouTube. Go ahead and check it out. Make sure you're giving it a like, a thumb, big thumbing. Give it a big thumbing, guys. Appreciate everything you guys do. That was a good one. But today, guys, is Weed Wednesday, our favorite day of the week. And I was going to review the game and play a little round of I'm in Love with Your Dead Grandmother. But I think I'm going to save it for the 7:10 a.m. show. If you guys didn't know, if you guys are just watching this for the first time or you only know about the 420 show, we do a 7:10 a.m. show, guys. That is hilarious. Super interactive with you guys. You guys make the show. You're throwing out one-liners. You're throwing out zingers. If you guys ever watch Opie and Anthony back in the day or listen to a radio show, you guys are the special guests. You guys are the ones making the show great. Kind of like Opie and Anthony. I'm just there doing my shtick, and you guys come in with those great lines. Oh, man, we got prizes. We got a good time. Nothing says waking up like Daily Dank at 7:10 a.m. in your cup, guys. So check that out. So we're going to do that tomorrow. We're going to be playing a little I'm in Love with Your Dead Grandmother video game. Oh, man. You guys know how we love comedy. You guys know how we love stand-up comedians. We have a great one for you today, guys. James Inman, stand-up comedian extraordinaire, guys, is joining us on the show today. We talk all sorts of things, crazy cocaine stories, crazy weed stories. Very great guy. He's been featured on the Dan Stanhope podcast, guys. He's in with all the regular comedians. He won the San Francisco comedy competition. He's an up-and-comer guy. He's been around for a long time. But man, he's one to watch. He's been featured in a lot of documentaries. He has his own documentary coming up. Very, very, very cool. I'm excited about that. Yeah, guys. So, yeah. James Inman. I'm excited, guys. We tell a lot of stories, so make sure you're sticking around for that as we count down to 420. Got a few minutes, guys. I'm going to go over, we haven't really been doing our top 10, our top 5 at 420 like we used to. I'm on the road. I had a lot of time, hard to edit it before we throw it up. So I've been doing these, but I do want to go over some top 5 as we got some time to kill, guys. I want to talk about, since we're talking comedians, it is Weed Wednesday. I'm going to give you my top 5, my personal top 5 favorite stand-up comedians and why. All right, and this is going to be in some kind of an order, but not like a married order. Like, I'm going to try to keep it true. Like, okay, this is my number 5 comedian. This is my number 4. But it could kind of vary. So, bear with me, guys. All right, so I'm going to come in at number 5. One of my all-time favorite comedians, guys, is a comedian named Jim Norton. If you guys have not checked Jim Norton out, and you're into adult humor, you're okay with a little dark humor, Jim Norton is for you. Oh man, Monster Rain. He has a Monster Rain special that just is hilarious, guys. He's a great comedian. He's been around for a long time. He's a regular over at all the comedy clubs. He has a ton of specials. Been in a ton of movies. Has radio shows. Jim Norton, man. He's a great stand-up comedian. One of my favorites. I love his comedy. I love how he gets down and how he delivers it. So definitely my number 5 pick on my all-time top favorite comedians, guys. Number 4, I'm going to go with Sam Kinison. That's right, Sam Kinison, guys. God rest his soul. Passed away right here in lovely Needles, Nevada. Well, kind of. Needles, California, guys, on the Nevada highway, the California, Needles Highway. I don't know if it was on the California side or Nevada side. He was headed to the Riverside Casino to perform. I was in 6th grade. I remember it. Man, I had a little too much to drink, a little too much going on that back road, man, and they crashed, and I believe him and his girlfriend died. Horrible. Way too soon for Sam Kinison. Man, he was grinding it out. But yeah, great stand-up comedian. If you guys have not seen his stand-up, you guys should. All right, so then we go, man, this is going to get hard. Number 3. I hadn't planned this, but it just sunk in my head. I got to go Dice. If we're going to talk stand-up, we're talking mega superstars, guys. Andrew Dice Clay. Oh, man, he's the first one. First one selling out arenas. First one, man, he was huge. Who remembers him getting kicked off of MTV? Oh, man, I totally remember that. Oh, Mother Hubbard. You guys know. Andrew Dice Clay. Yeah, for my generation, he was huge. What about The Adventures of Ford Fairlane? Remember that movie? You want to go mano a mano? What does that even mean, a mano? He's trying to make a comeback, guys. He's doing pretty good. All right, who else do we got? You know what? So the top 2, that's going to be hard, man. I threw Dice in there, so it kind of threw my my mojo, my plan off. But for number 2, number 2, I'm going to go Pryor. Richard Pryor, guys. Oh my God. Revolutionary, groundbreaking Richard Pryor, man. His stand-up is legendary. Man, Richard Pryor, you can't get better than that. Oh, maybe you can. I'm going to go with 2. 2 people are tied for first in my thing, guys. 2 people are tied for first. I'm going to give it to George Carlin and Eddie Murphy. The Raw, oh my God, Eddie Murphy Raw, that special, Delirious. Oh, so good. Man, brilliant. And then George Carlin. What can you say, man? Brilliant. So ahead of his time. So freaking revolutionary. Man, George Carlin. Ooh, yeah, Eddie Murphy kind of, it's neck and neck, guys. But yeah, man, George Carlin. What a great comic. What a great comic. All right, guys. Those are my top picks. Who are your favorite stand-up comedians of all time? Blow up those comment, guys. Let me see all your top 5s. Blow it up. Hey, if you hashtag top 5, I'm going to get you entered to win something nice. All right, guys. We got a couple seconds left. Who's getting ready for 420? I'm getting ready for 420. I am getting into, I got to be vaping. I'm out and about. I got some gelato. Yeah, go figure. I'm smoking on some gelato, guys. And West Coast Cure Company, I'm mixing and matching the vape. Got a little bong that I bring for the vape. It goes up, the stem comes down. Pretty good. Gives it that extra kick. that vape doesn't have compared to flower. So that's what I'm getting into. What are you guys getting into? Blow up those comments. Let me know, because we got about 15 seconds for 420, guys. Oh man, it is Wednesday, hump day. You guys know you need this. Head on down to 1400 Needles Highway, Needles, California, the Healing Center, guys, where you can inhale positivity, exhale negativity, guys. And remember, you're alive, you're kicking, you got two hands. Well, some of you might not, but you got a will, you got a way. If you got two hands, you can fight. That's right, guys. You can live another day. Let's appreciate what we got, because it is 420, guys. Mine was fire. I had a great time. Oh man. Ooh, that vape. If you're doing the bong, it can hit you right, man. I'm not sold on these vapes 100%. I love me some flower, I love me some wax, but vape, in a pinch, it'll work. What was you guys getting into? What were you guys getting into? Blow up those comments. Let me know, guys. All right, I'm declaring it officially Weed Wednesday. Whoop, 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 whoop. All right, guys, it is Weed Wednesday. We are getting into this amazing interview with James Inman, stand-up comedian especial, guys. He's been on Doug Stanhope's podcast. He's been on all the guys' podcasts. He's in the clique, guys, in the comedian clique. He performed. He won the San Francisco comedy hunt award, guys. He won a bunch of stuff. He's performing. He's a regular working comedian. Has some great weed stories, some great cocaine stories, just some great crazy stories, guys. We're going to give it up right now. So please, guys, be prepared. Give it up. It's a great interview for the amazing, the mighty and powerful. I was going to say something. James Inman, guys. Please give it up for the great James Inman. We'll see you guys. Hey, what's up, guys? We are back. And you guys know how I love stand-up comedy, and I love hitting the clubs and seeing all the talent. There's nothing like it, guys. We talk about the comedy club in LA. We talk about everything a lot on the show. We got a special one, guys. We have a stand-up comedian, James Inman, in the house, guys. Oh, we did have him in the house. I guess he's leaving. He must not have liked my intro.
No, I'm right here.
Guys, we talk about, like filmmaking and all the careers and what a grind life is. I think stand-up comedy, it's the most rewarding from what I've seen, but also one of the most treacherous and just really exhausting professions out there. And I think this guy embodies that. I've heard him referred to as the mashup of Henry Rollins and Don Rickles, which I don't even know what to think about that. So guys, give it up for James Inman. How are you doing, sir?
Fine.
So tell us a little bit about, like we were saying, about the grind of comedy. What made you want to pursue this out of all the other careers in the world? What was it about that passion that made you want to get into comedy?
Well, I mean, I used to be in a band when I was in high school. I played, heavy metal, like Led Zeppelin and all that, you know, Van Halen and crap like that. And then when I got almost like 19 years old, 20 years old, a friend of mine was like, because in Missouri, you couldn't drink mixed drinks. You could only drink beer, and it was like 3-2 beer. And so he found this bar. He's like, there's this bar that won't card us. And we go in and we could drink 21-year-old drinks, Yeah. And it's a comedy club, and they won't card us because they don't want to ruin the show, right? Yeah. And so we went in there. We were like under 21. I was probably 19 or 20 years old, and I got to see live comedy. I was like, holy shit, this is funny. We would order strawberry daiquiris. I mean, how dumb is that? I mean, literally strawberry daiquiris.
So teenage boy.
Yeah, and so I was just I'd never seen live comedy before, and these guys, they'd introduce them and they go, "Oh, this is Mike Cesario. He's from Minneapolis. He drove all the way down here to do comedy, and this guy's on stage for like 45 minutes doing like jokes that you can't do on TV." And after the show, the MC was like, if you think you're funny and you want to come down to open mic night, we get you on stage and we'll knock that idea right out of your head. Which is like, I must have heard that joke like 500 times until finally I was like, fuck, I want to do it. And so I went and I did open mic night, which they just give you 5 minutes. And what I remember after I did open mic night, I don't remember how well I did or if I got any laughs or anything, but I went home and I was laying in my bed. I couldn't go to sleep. I was just looking at the ceiling and I was like, this is my calling. This is what I want to do. And so from then on, I did open mic night every fucking week, every Tuesday at Stamford Sons Comedy Club. And then the other clubs would open up and we'd go and do those, So like for 5 years, I did open mic nights until I got like 10, 15 minutes of comedy. But I never quit. I mean, I did it. I started in 1984.
Oh, wow. So you've been at it a long time.
Yeah. And so I did it for like 10 years in Kansas City. I moved to Minneapolis. I moved to Sioux City, Iowa, and then I moved to Seattle. When I moved to Seattle, I moved there before I even knew what the grunge movement was. I didn't even know what grunge was. I didn't know what computers were. But my favorite comic was Bill Hicks, and so I'm in Seattle, and and all of a sudden, all my jokes are working, like the jokes that I used to love to do in Kansas City. That because Kansas is like the Bible Belt. And when I got up in Seattle, that's when like all my jokes worked. And so I got most of my success in Seattle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not to cut you off or get off track. So on that, like I know like timing and those type of things are like super important. When it actually clicks, how does that feel? Like, because you were saying you were kind of like you were working on it for years at that point. So when you got to Seattle, like how did that feel? Like when you just it started clicking for you?
Oh, well, it's kind of it's a little bit of an ego thing, and you're kind of riding the wave of your ego. And so when you have a good show, you think you're funny. And so you're walking on air, and then you go up the next night thinking you're funny, and then you're not funny. And so you walk around the whole day depressed, and you're sitting there thinking that you're not funny. And then you go on stage that night thinking you're not funny, and then you kill again. So I started just going on stage thinking I'm not funny. I started telling myself I'm not funny. So just so I could have a good show. And it's more about like not having any expectations whatsoever. And then I started getting into meditation, and it's kind of it fucks with your head. And so you got to be funny. You got to remain funny. And so once I figured that out, it was just like smooth sailing. Does that make sense?
It almost sounds like as if bipolar was a career choice. That's what it kind of sounds like.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy people in stand-up comedy, and I never wanted to let comedy turn me into a crazy person. So I had like meditation that I did on the side so I could remain sane, and then I'd be able to do my comedy and be kind of detached from it to where I could just do it and forget about it.
Yeah. So does that work out pretty well for you? Like keep it, like if you had a bad show or something, you can just walk off, kind of let it slide off your back.
Yeah.
And say, and I suck anyway. It's for the next day.
Yeah, because the thing that really that hinders a lot of people that want to get into comedy, they want to get into comedy, but they're like, I don't think I'd be able to live with myself if I had a bad show. And so you got to be able to play the fool. You got to be able to slip on the banana peel, and you've got to be able to fail. So it's all about failure. I mean, it really is, because that's the whole archetype of the job that you're doing. You're on stage and you're saying stupid things. You're not one of the smart people. You're not a judge. You're not a professor. You're not a pastor. You're not a wise person. You're a dumb person, and you say crazy dumb things. And so once you get that in your head, that you're not really clever, it's more like an idiot savant. You're like you're clever stupid.
Good at that. Like what is that, court gesture, right? Like, isn't that?
Yeah. I mean, it's an old profession, probably as old as pastor or politician. You have to speak. You have to learn how to speak in front of a crowd, but it has to be funny. And I'm sure they've been doing it since the Egyptians and the Sumerians. Any place. It's just storytelling, but it's funny storytelling.
Yeah. Who were some of your big influences? Like you mentioned Hicks and a few other. Who were some of your big influences? Before you really got deep into the comedy.
Well, before I saw Hicks, I really liked this guy named Alex Cole, and he was from Minneapolis, and he used to just before I knew what was going on, he was just kind of the type of comic that just could talk off the top of his head and get laughs. Like when I saw him, it was when I was first starting out. It seemed like, oh man, this guy's not doing prepared material. Like he would walk off stage and talk to the waitress and be doing jokes left and right and dealing with the audience and stuff. And now that I look back, I know that what he was doing was improv. He was talking off the top of his head. And then years later, maybe it was 1987, I think, there was this comic who told us he just worked with Bill Hicks. He had opened up for Bill Hicks, and he goes, "You gotta see Bill Hicks. You gotta see Bill Hicks. He's a genius." And we're like, "What the fuck?" And I remember him saying he takes acid on stage. And I knew what acid was because I'd taken it in high school. I'm like, holy shit, this is a comic, takes acid on stage. And so we heard that he was playing out in Columbia, Missouri. And so me and a friend, we drove all the way out to Columbia, Missouri, which is like a 2-hour drive to see this guy because we heard he was so good. And sure enough, that night when I saw Hicks, he absolutely destroyed. He killed so hard that the crowd wouldn't stop clapping, and the club owner had to bring him up on stage. And so I saw Hicks do an encore the first night that I saw him. And the weird thing was, after doing comedy for 30 years, I've only seen 2 encores.
Who was the
in
second?
My career? I've only, So encores are not something that comics do very often, but that night he killed so hard, they had to bring him up.
Oh man. Yeah, that's rare. Who was the second who got the encore, if you don't mind me asking?
I can't remember the guy's name. It was a bald guy from Lincoln, Nebraska. Can't remember the guy's name. I got an encore once. So I've seen 3 encores. Yeah. Yeah, I got an encore once.
How did that feel?
Oh, it was amazing. It was like, holy crap.
Were you walking on the cloud as you were walking out?
Yeah. It was one of those things where it was like, don't get a big head, but I just got an encore. And it was the first time that I started doing a little bit of improv on stage. So it was, it was the first time I got a headline gig. See, I'd always been opening or featuring, and this booking agent, he's like, yeah, I got to book you in Salina, Kansas. It's $225. And I was like, wow, how come it's so much? I mean, they must pay a lot for feature acts. He goes, oh no, you're headlining. I was like, oh shit. I didn't say anything to the guy because I only had 30 minutes. And so when I got to the club, I did, 15 minutes up front. I started fucking around in the middle of my show, like just talking up the top of my head. And then I ended with my best 15 minutes and thank you, good night. And they fucking stood up and started clapping. And it was, it wasn't an encore. It was a standing ovation. That's what it was.
It's still pretty freaking pretty awesome. I'm a filmmaker, and I've had a couple times where we do a screening at a festival or something, and you get a packed house for whatever reason, and they actually receive the message and the story that you're trying to say, and there's nothing greater than that, especially when you work so hard on material, which it sounds like you had worked years at that point to build up a good 30-minute set, right? Like 15 and 15 like that. Wow.
I mean, I was obsessed with it. I mean, I became addicted to it the day I started doing it, and I was all day long I was sitting around thinking, how do I be funny? I was reading books on creativity. I was reading books on how to give a speech. I was I'm going to the library, reading books on comedy. And so I did everything I could to learn how to do it.
So we hear a lot, like, well, obviously you guys travel a lot. You're going club to club, you're going state to state. What are some of the things about the travel? Like, do you enjoy it? Does it get taxing after a little bit, or?
Well, it's kind of like I'm kind of an introvert, so I'm not really into travel. I think it's kind of funny when you go to these personal ads. Almost in every bio, of women, their bios they usually go, I like to travel. Yeah, I'm sure you do. You want to go to fucking Italy, or you want to go to Europe, or I was never into traveling, but that's part of the job. You have to travel. And so it's kind of something that I never cared about, but the fun thing when I look back, I've been to almost every state in the country, and including Canada, St. Martin, Amsterdam, England, Edinburgh. So I've been all over. I got a chance to travel, even though I didn't like it.
But hey, and it was part of the career too, right? How is it? Do you have to offset your your show, like from state to state? Like, do you kind of gauge, okay, these people are a little more country, or these people, so maybe I got it. How do you go about that kind of mindset?
Well, you learn it just like you learn anything else, and it's kind of it's intuitive, non-logical. A lot of things about stand-up comedy are non-logical, and so you just have an intuitive feeling when you walk into the crowd and you see the audience, and it's something as simple as you see what kind of clothes they're wearing, you see how old they are. You know if it's the early show or the late show. You see if there's women in the audience or mostly men, or all that kind of thing, and you understand it instantly. You just kind of know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that something like you just experience? You just kind of like the more you do it, the more you can kind of pivot. You'd be like,
Yeah,
okay, this
yeah.
is
I
on.
mean, I was good at it because I don't know, because maybe I'm just dumb in a certain way, or I never went to college, and so I was never really taught uh, how to think in overly logical. Um, like I was good at math, but for some reason there's shit that I just kind of know, or I was because maybe it's because I played the guitar or something. But I had a friend that was really funny, just funny off stage. But the guy, of course, he was well educated. You know, he went to college and he went to graduate school. So when he'd go on stage, he was like following every rule, and he was thinking rationally about everything, and trying to make all of his jokes make sense, you know. And I'm like, dude, you need to be more yourself on stage and stop trying to be perfect. You know, comedy is not about being perfect at all. You know, it's more like you're like a jazz musician, and it's more about feeling. You got to feel it, and you got to just say it and not think. You got to, yeah, I started getting way more success when I stopped thinking before I spoke. So it's a complete opposite of what a politician does, or what a pastor. A pastor sits around and thinks deeply about it, what he's going to say. But a comic, a fool, just talks off the top of his head. He just like a child. And most of that I got from reading books, you know, on you know, I kind of eventually it kind of, you know, it's not something you want to overthink.
Yeah. So with all this time on the road, we got to ask, because, you know, we're kind of a cannabis community here. I got to ask, with all those trips on the road, you got to have some good stories. You got to have a couple to throw at us, man.
Oh yeah, well, after I heard Bill Hicks did acid on stage, you know, because I'd smoked pot and taken acid in high school, and here I was like 24, 25 years old. I'm out trying to find acid, you know, I'm trying to, you know, because Bill Hicks did acid.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And so I hooked up with, got lucky. I was working in Austin, Texas, and I got to work with some of Bill Hicks's friends, like this guy named Tom Hester, who was like friends with Hicks. And so I was always like, tell me stories about Bill Hicks, you know, and Tom would tell me stories about Bill Hicks, and he always had acid, and we'd trip during the day. And then, you know, I mean, he had the best acid. He had fucking acid. He'd have ecstasy. There was one time, actually, it's kind of funny. It got to the point where when I was going down to Texas, I booked some gigs close by the border, because I met a girl in Austin, and she goes, yeah, we drive down to Mexico all the time, and we go see a doctor, and we get Valium, we get fucking pain pills and shit. I was like, oh my God. So I drove down to Mexico a couple times. I had like fucking giant bottles of Valium. I'd have diet pills, which were basically speed, because I read books on Lenny Bruce. You know, there's a great book called Ladies and Gentlemen, Lenny Bruce by Albert Goldman. And in that book, he goes through all the different drugs that Lenny Bruce had. So I'm
sure it was a laundry list of them too.
Yeah, so I was down in Texas, and I had a virtual fucking, like almost like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in my backpack. I had acid, I had ecstasy, I had fucking mushrooms, I had Valium, I had speed, I had
all in a backpack.
Yeah, and it was like, you know, the first part of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is like you've got to read that book if you're a comic. It's one of the funniest books you'll ever read, and you know, because there's that part in there where he's talking about all the different drugs that he had. You know, I think I even had methamphetamine at the time. This is before methamphetamine became like this this drug that
thing,
makes
right?
you lose your teeth, and so
They
so
gave you a sample pack. They're like,
yeah,
hey, this is our new product.
but I like the diet pills. I really like those. But the funniest story is a friend of mine, Emery, who's a comic that I started with. He had always heard stories about Bill Hicks, but he'd never seen him, right? Because, me and my friends were like, oh, you got to see Hicks. Oh, you got to see Hicks, and we were like repeating his jokes and shit. And so Emery is like, oh, Bill Hicks came to Kansas City again, and Emery was there, like sitting at the front row, ready to watch everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so after Emery sees Hicks, he starts wearing black on stage. He starts dressing just like Bill Hicks. He starts pacing the stage, like he's Bill Hicks and stuff. And he goes down to Austin, right? And he starts hanging out with Tom Hester. And Hester, he was always talking about mushrooms. He's like, oh, yeah, we go out in the field 2 days after rain, and mushrooms grow right off of cow pies. And so he told Emery this, right?
Yeah.
And Emery's like, oh, I'm going to go get some mushrooms, right? But you got to remember, Emery never did drugs in his life, ever. Like, no drugs. Because, like, I'd be hanging out with him. And one time he goes, I got a headache. And I go, Emery, why don't you take a Tylenol or take an aspirin? And he goes, I don't do drugs. I go, Emery, Tylenol isn't a drug. They sell it over the counter. I'm trying to explain to him that, so Emery had never done drugs, never smoked pot, didn't drink, okay?
But getting ready to go look in a field for cow pies.
Yes, but here's the other funny part. He's one of those people that likes to get something at a thrift store, or like if he gets like 500 comic books for $1, he'll buy all the comic books, he's always looking for a deal. He wasn't Jewish, but I mean, if he knew that mushrooms were free, he'd go out there, and sure enough, he brings back a fucking Coleman cooler halfway full of hallucinogenic mushrooms, because he went out there. He must have been out there for like 8 or 10 hours.
The guy who doesn't do drugs.
Mushroom off of every cow pie. And he calls me up and goes, Inman, come over here. I'm like, what? He goes, I can't say anything over the phone. Just get over here. So I drive over there. He shows me this cooler. It's not one of the small coolers. It's a big cooler.
It's a big one.
And he opens up the lid, and it's half full of mushrooms. And I go, holy shit. I mean, this is like a federal law. I mean, this is yeah. And I'm looking at him, and he goes, what should we do? I go, what do you mean, what should we do? Didn't you take any? He goes, no, I haven't taken any yet, because I didn't know what to do. Because he's scared that they might be poisonous. Yeah. I go, Jesus Christ. Okay. So I go, this is what we do. You drive me down to the bookstore. I'll get a book on mushrooms, and we'll look at the book, and we'll check out the mushrooms, because they got all the fucking different things that you got to tell. And, the stem has to be blue. The cap has to be a certain shape, and it has to grow up a certain thing. I go, okay, so the stem looks right. The cap looks right. The colors look right. I go, did you get this? Did you get any of these off of wood? And he goes, no, I got every one of them off of cow pies. I go, somebody's got to test one of them. and he goes, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, you motherfucker. And so I'm like, I had taken mushrooms. I'd taken acid. I'd taken drugs. So I'm like, all right, whatever. And so I just pop one of them in my mouth. I go, all right, Emery, look at the fucking watch. In 45 minutes, I should be tripping. And here's Emery, look at the watch. I'm his guinea pig, right? So 45 minutes go by, and of course I'm tripping. And he's like, oh my God. Those mushrooms lasted like 10 years. He kept them in his freezer. He took those fucking mushrooms out to LA. When he moved out to LA, he still had them in his goddamn freezer. That's how long those mushrooms lasted.
And how tight he was with cash, right? He's like,
yeah,
I ain't getting rid of these things.
Oh yeah. I don't know if he, what he did with them, but he took an awful lot of mushrooms. So, because when he started taking them, he realized what it was like to be high because he'd never gotten high before. So yeah, he'd never taken Tylenol. His first drug was mushrooms.
Well, that's a leap. That's a big leap. So I got to ask too, is there a difference eating a fresh mushroom right out of the ground, right out of the cow pie? Was it a little more potent than like some of the dry
I don't know. Some mushrooms, they have to be dried, like the Amanita muscaria. I think these weren't Amanita muscaria, but some mushrooms, they're pretty much the same potency if they're dry or not dry. But there's other mushrooms that you have to dry them or you have to heat them up over a fire. And they were the mushrooms that people took in like Siberia and shit. Like there used to be tribes in Siberia that would herd like reindeer and shit. And then they sat around a campfire just like our cowboys used to.
Yeah.
And instead of drinking liquor, they would take mushrooms. And what they found out was you had to dry them or you had to heat them up over the fire. And they would take the mushrooms. And the other funny thing that they found out was when they urinated and when someone drank that urine, the hallucinogen or whatever it was that was in that particular mushroom would go through the urine, and you could drink the urine and you could get just as high as taking a mushroom. So there'd be these guys sitting outside the fucking party, drinking other people's urine, still getting high.
So I wonder who was their guinea pig. Who was, like you said, you were your buddy's guinea pig. Who's the guy
somebody,
that's drink this piss and we'll get you high.
Yeah, that's those ethnobiologists, those guys like Terrence McKenna. It's amazing how many different plants there are in Amazon, and these little tribes down there. They found this one plant, when you mix it with this other plant, you could take ayahuasca. And the two plants, the one would do something to your stomach and the other one, it would go through your system. And that's ayahuasca's got DMT in it. I don't know. They still to this day don't know how they figured it out.
Like a
there's
combination
tribes,
of a bunch of plants. Yeah.
I remember watching that when I was a kid, like those documentaries about those tribes that would snort those from a big tube, and it was DMT.
Yeah. That's all. Yeah, actually, that's one thing on my, I'm just a pot guy now. I don't mess around with no hard stuff in my younger days, whatever. But that's one thing that is on my list is DMT. I would like to try it at least once in my life.
Well, I mean, it's funny how after the 60s, Nixon, he started the goddamn drug war, and it was just so he could throw black people in jail and hippies in jail. That's the only reason he did it. He's a fucking racist. And the first time I got high just with marijuana, it was an eye-opening experience because I was fully awake. Because there's the sober consciousness, and then there's the high consciousness. And it was one of those things it just came over me. And I was like in another world. I was like, what is this? This is not a dream. This is not sober consciousness. This is like another world.
Yeah.
So even drugs like marijuana, if you smoke enough of it, if you smoke it every day, you like being in that world, and then of course years later, I probably read way more books than I have. I've read more books about drugs than I've actually taken drugs, because I just loved reading. When I became a comedian, I had all day off to read. So I'd go to bookstores and shit. And another thing I heard about marijuana was this guy, I can't remember. It's a book about drugs, but it's called The Natural Mind. And it was written by a neurologist. And and this is what I find interesting. he was talking about how most people that smoke pot, the first or second time they smoke it, they don't get high. And that's what happened to me. Like, I had a friend when I was a kid, he's like, we got to smoke this stuff. And I smoked a shit ton of it. And he was all laughing and high, but I was like, I don't get it. Like, I did not get high the first couple times I smoked marijuana. I mean, years later, I read about this. Like, most people that smoke marijuana, they don't get high the first time because there's something in your brain that your brain teaches itself how to get high. Like, it's like this thing that you discover. You're like, oh, I'm high. This is what being high is about. Which, the first times I smoked it, I guess my brain didn't click. Like, I was probably had a shit ton of THC in my body, but I really wasn't high, or I didn't know I was high. Yeah. Maybe that's it. You're high, but you don't know you're high. But the third time I smoked pot, that's when it all kind of, it clicked. It was like, oh, this is what being high is about, right? And then years later, when I got into meditation, it's kind of the same thing, because when they hear other people say, dude, you got to meditate, or they read a book about meditation, or they see a documentary, or they see the Dalai Lama. Oh, I've always wanted to meditate. And so they'll sit down, they'll do it for like 5 or 10 minutes or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But with me, that was one of the reasons I got into meditation, because of Bill Hicks. I heard Bill Hicks meditated, Tom Hester meditated. So they didn't just take drugs. I mean, they were experimenting with all kinds of stuff, right? Yeah. So I'm like, Bill Hicks meditated, I'm going to meditate. So I would do it every day, like, 5 minutes or whatever. And I was like, nothing's really clicking. I don't get, I knew I was calming my body and my thoughts, but I kept doing it. I kept doing it to where one day, I did it longer than 5 minutes. I did it for like 20 minutes. And all of a sudden, it's just like everything clicked. It was like I was in another place. It was like I taught my brain how to meditate. And your brain just kind of naturally understands it. And I try to explain this to people when I tell them to meditate. I go, dude, you'll do it for a long time. It's very subtle. It's a very subtle thing that it'll just come on to you, and you won't really know that you're doing it until you actually learn how to do it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense.
But cocaine is kind of like that too. Like, for the first time I did cocaine, I was like, I don't get why this is so fun. But like 2 or 3 times later, I was like, oh, okay, because I did some with a guy, and we were both talking and everything, and cocaine is kind of subtle. Yeah. A lot of people do cocaine, they're like, I don't get it. But anyway,
going back and doing it again. So
yeah, but I mean, there are some drugs. I mean, you take 4 hits of acid, you're gonna get high.
Oh yeah.
There's just no two ways about it. But because LSD is not very subtle.
No. Yeah, I would think that's like kicking your front door open. Like you ain't stopping an acid trip. Yeah.
Well, they even have stories about DMT. They say that when you're smoking DMT, because it just so happens the best way to take it into your body is to smoke it.
Yeah.
That you don't have they say that you have to take 3 deep hits. And like on the 3rd hit is when you come out of your body.
Yeah.
It's
into orbit.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, it's like people that meditate or people that push that envelope when it comes to mysticism, they have those experiences where they come out of their body, or they have lucid dreams. And so these people that take DMT, when they describe these experiences, it sounds like they're coming out of their body. Yeah. Or it sounds like when they describe it, they are becoming one with everything. Because I mean, because I first friend of mine that did DMT, he was telling me, right when I smoked it, I felt like I was part of the furniture. And he was saying how it was such a strange experience. But that's what you feel like when you're in deep meditation. And they even say it. I was one with everything. You know, there's a reason why they say that, because you can meditate so deeply that you feel like you're one with everything.
Yeah. Well, don't we aren't like we have DMT already in our bodies, correct? Like that's what I've always got. So maybe there's a way through meditation that you release that and you actually kind of have a similar trip of taking a DMT through.
Well, there's every night you go to sleep and you dream. That's another thing. When you start studying mysticism, there's some things that you learn that they don't teach in school.
Yeah.
Like they talk about the things that you know that you think you know, but you don't know that you know. And one interesting thing, you start noticing things that you totally took for granted. Like, for instance, every night when you go to sleep, you dream. And that's a completely other different reality. I mean, you don't have to take drugs to hallucinate, because you hallucinate every night.
That's a good way. I never put 2 and 2 together like that.
If you tell someone that, you know, everyone dreams. I mean, a lot of people do. Some people, they don't remember their dreams, but you tell somebody that, they're like, I know. And you're like, no, you say you know, but do you really know?
Yeah.
Oh, here's another interesting story about marijuana. I've been to a couple monasteries, right?
Really?
And one of the Buddhist monasteries that I went to was down by it was south of Seattle by Evergreen State College. Okay, so Evergreen State College it's a notorious hippie college, right? It's real liberal and left wing, and so there was a group of people from Evergreen State College at the monastery, because it was a 10-day retreat, and the teacher told everyone, he said, now some of you people, because when you're at the retreat, you can't drink alcohol, you can't smoke pot, you can't watch TV, you can't write anything down in a diary. You know, all you have to do is meditate and, you know, eat lunch, and that's it, right? And you can't even look at anybody else. So you got all these things where you basically, they're not rules like, oh, this is a sin. It's not a rule like that. It's more like, do these things and see what happens. Well, what happens is you put yourself in an altered state of consciousness for those 10 fucking days, because you're not reading the newspaper, you're not distracted, and all you're doing is meditating. The teacher said, now, you people that smoke marijuana every day, you may notice that your dreams are going to be very intense. And after the 10-day retreat, you know, that's when they allow everyone to talk. That's another thing too. You can't talk. No talking for 10 days. So, you know, talking makes your mind go. Yeah. Anyway, so on the 10th day, they let everyone talk. Anyway, these guys from the Evergreen State College were going, oh my God, my dreams were so amazing. They were like, I was in another world. So if you stop smoking pot, your dreams are going to be more intense.
Yeah, when I do I'm a daily smoker, but sometimes I'll do a week off, so it kind of rejuvenates everything, and resets my system. And during that week, man, I usually don't dream like what I remember, but during that week, I have some crazy. Ones.
If you really like altered states of consciousness, because that's basically what marijuana is. Marijuana is altering your state of consciousness. Now, you do it with alcohol, you do it with dreaming, you do it with meditation. There's a million different ways of doing it, but here's the key. Whatever you do every day, eventually that's your state of consciousness. And so if you really like altered state of consciousness, you would experiment with different states of consciousness. You know, like for instance, stop smoking pot for a while and do something else. You know, maybe you don't like beer. Well, how about you just drink beer for a week and see what that's like? Or you don't take any drugs for a week and see what that's like. Or you go from marijuana to LSD, or you fucking snort cocaine for a week. Whatever it is that you do is opening your mind to different states, and it's, you're learning all kinds of different things when you play around with your mind. Basically, that's what you're doing, because that's all we are anyway, is consciousness. That's all we know is our own consciousness.
Yeah.
So I'm not telling people to stop smoking pot. I'm just saying, fucking experiment.
Did you hear the guy on the Daily Dank? He said we need to give up pot and start snorting coke, man. Come on, we're gonna do it.
That's not what I mean.
No,
but,
I know.
Yeah.
No, but like you're saying, like, you got to be open if you really want to the mess around with your
because like I used to drink every day, and so I started finding shit out that I had totally forgot, because I drank every day. And so when I stopped drinking, I didn't stop drinking because of AA. I stopped drinking because I was meditating. I didn't want it to fuck up my meditation. But the funny thing is, after I stopped drinking, you know, there'd be days where I would drink, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to get drunk today. And man, it's like I had forgotten how fucked up you can get on alcohol. And they sell it at the goddamn store. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, at the time I was taking oxycodone. That's another thing. I got a hold of a bunch of opiates, and I was taking opiates for a while. Now those are fun, but they don't fuck you up like alcohol.
No, alcohol. You know, alcohol, like, so opiates to me is like, I like taking opiates. I can see how people would get addicted to them. I like taking them because they put me down and let me sleep, whatever. But that's not what I want to do all the time. But when you're drinking, you're like, you're on opiates, but you're walking and moving around.
I mean, doing damage. I want to reiterate that we're both adults here, and I'm not condoning the use of opiates, or you got to be very careful. And I'm lucky because I'd rather meditate than do anything, really. And so because I'm able to meditate, you know, when I had the oxy, I also had what did I have? Somebody, their doctor had to stop giving him oxycodone, because he was like, we have to help people get off oxycodone. It was back when Trump's wife was doing that shit about Oxycontin. And so this doctor goes, I got to get you off of oxycodone. What I'm going to give you is methadone. and so she had this goddamn bottle of methadone. She took like 2 of them, and she goes, I don't like these because they make me sick. Here, you can have them. So I had an entire bottle of methadone, right? So I started taking those every day, right? And I was nodding out, like, you know, I knew, I'd seen like videos of you know, TV or whatever. Here's a guy, a heroin addict, nodding out. I fucking was doing that, right? And so I was taking it every day or whatever. And so I ran out, right? And it's funny because I didn't like put 2 and 2 together. I was with a friend, and we went and we had lunch somewhere. And right after that lunch, I got sick. Like I was like, oh, I thought it was food poisoning, right? And so I called up my friend. I go, dude, I think I got food poisoning. That restaurant you took me to. Did you get food poisoning? What did you eat? And I was like, call the other guys. Ask them if they got food poisoning. And he calls them up. He's like, nope, they don't have food poisoning. I was like, man, why am I so fucking sick?
Johnson.
My stomach was churning, and I was sweating. I was like, this has got to be food poisoning. And that fucking lasted 4 days. And finally, I went to the doctor, and she's like, well, what else have you been doing? I go, well, a friend of mine gave me a bottle of methadone. She goes, oh, you got dope sickness.
You were dope sick.
I was dope sick and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And
taking the stuff that gets you off the harder stuff. You got dope sick.
Yeah. So of course I fucking after those 4 days, I was like, fuck that. I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucked. It sucked, man. I understand now why people get so addicted to that shit because, man, you've got to have it. If you don't have it, you get sick, like crazy sick.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's one thing I've never tried. I don't think like that hard.
Yeah, you don't want to do it. Don't do it.
No,
I mean, because methadone is like as strong as heroin.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's way stronger than oxycodone. Trust me.
That's crazy.
I had a guy. Oh, dude, I've got so many funny drug stories. I met a guy in New York that was at a Doug Stanhope show, and so you know, Doug does drugs.
Stanhope, great comedian.
Yeah, and we're in the green room. This guy pulls out a bottle of pills, and he's got like every pill known to man. He's got fucking speed. He's got oxy. He's got Xanax. And so I'm like, oh, this is a guy I want to be friends with, right? So I'm hanging out with him, and he's giving me oxy, and I find out how he's getting them, right? Yeah. And so he's got this doctor he's friends with, and he goes over and he sees this doctor, and he goes into his office, and he talks to him, right? And he acts like he's friends with this doctor, and he hangs out with him, and he waits for the doctor to go to the bathroom, and that's when he'll go through his desk. He'll steal his fucking prescription. What he writes down is fucking rips him off of the thing and sticks it in his pocket, and then he was writing his own fucking prescriptions, and he was going to like CVS, and they would give him fucking 40 milligram oxycodone, whatever
he felt like.
Yeah. And so he was basically, for years, he did this. He was prescribing himself Xanax and oxycodone. And when he finally got busted, like the doctor figured it out, the doctor's like, nope, this is over, So he was screwed. He couldn't get any more oxy, and he couldn't get any more Xanax. And I asked him, I was like, well, was it hard to quit? He goes, the oxy was not hard to quit at all. The hard thing was the Xanax.
Really?
Yeah. He said Xanax was harder to quit than oxy.
Yeah, that's surprising. You wouldn't think that, I don't know. But any prescription drug, you think because they prescribe it to you, it's safe. But I mean, there's been a million of them that we proved that.
No, so yeah. I mean, pot's not really addictive, but it's the only reason it's addictive is because you like it and you want to smoke it every day, but it's not physically addictive.
No, it's like coffee or anything like that. That's how I kind of compare it to. Like if you don't have your cup of coffee, you get a headache, but does that mean you're addicted to it?
Well, it does open up parts of your brain that, because some people, when they smoke pot, they don't have a good experience and they start thinking about all kinds of shit that they don't want to think about, Yeah. I think another thing I read about, because I was reading so many books about altered states of consciousness, one thing about the marijuana high, when you smoke marijuana and you're the type of person that likes to smoke marijuana, you smoke it every day, one of the things that it does is it puts your brain into the brain waves, like they hook up shit to your brain and they look at the brain waves. The brain waves of a marijuana high are really close to a meditation high. So really? Yes, the people that like to smoke marijuana, they're able to kind of put their mind in that state that's close to meditation. However, there's a certain group of people that when they smoke marijuana, they can't stop thinking, they have bad thoughts or whatever, or they get paranoid. And those are the people that aren't able to go into that state, whatever that state is, which is a very calming state, and it feels really good. I mean, when you're meditating really deeply, I mean, it feels great,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the marijuana altered state is really similar to the meditative state.
Nice. So we're running a little short on time. I want to get into one thing. I've been hearing a lot of buzz. Word on the street is this movie on Amazon Prime, the Unbookables. That's what? Yeah, the Unbookables.
Oh yeah,
I've been hearing good things about it. Can you tell us a little more?
Oh right. So you're a filmmaker, right?
Yeah.
I did comedy for like 30 years, and I never wanted to move to LA because I hated LA, Yeah. And one of the things when I was living in Seattle, I met this guy who we became instant friends, and he was the local political. He had the #1 political show on their public access. Like every year, it win awards on how good it was. So every once or twice a week, he'd do this show called Deep Face the Nation. So he was always good with cameras, and back in the day, before we had computers, he had videotapes all over his house. Anyway, so this guy was always my friend, and he went from doing that political show to being a filmmaker, and he made a film about pirate radio. It was called Pirate Radio USA, and so he's calling me up all the time. He's proud, Yeah. The movie got invited to like 6 different film festivals. Nice. And so when he finally got that done, it was in the can. He got a distributor for the movie. He started calling me, going, "I want to make a documentary about you." I'm like, "What are you talking about? That's a dumb idea, And or he'd call me up and he's like, "I need a new project. I want to make a documentary about comedy." Or something, that has to do with comedy. And I kept putting him off, and then I get punched on stage, and it was on video. There was a camera in the room. The guy videotaped the show. He's like, "I'm gonna leave the camera on," and I'm like, "All right, whatever." I go on stage. I'm doing my act. This girl, she fucking climbs on stage and she punches me. And like it was a crazy show and everything.
Is there like a heckling situation before?
Yes, it was a heckler that climbed on stage and punched me. And
really?
So, yes. And this guy goes, "Dude, I'm going to put this on YouTube." And I'm like, I go, "What's YouTube?" Because YouTube had just come out, and he had a YouTube page, right? He uploaded that video. It became viral, right? I mean, I had people calling me. I had emails. I had like fucking Facebook and goddamn half the people loved it, half the people hated it, but it became viral before I knew what a viral video was. Like I didn't even know what YouTube was, right? And so sorry, my
no worries.
Can you so Doug Stanhope, he saw the video, right? Yeah. And he put the video on his website, and he created this page called the Unbookables, which were it was a page with all these different videos of his friends that did edgy comedy and push the envelope. And here's my video where I'm getting punched on stage, right? And so Doug came up with a name, and then all of a sudden this guy calls me up again. He's like, I want to do a documentary. I go, "Why don't you call Doug Stanhope and do it about the Unbookables?" So I hooked those two guys up. Jeff Pearson, he's the filmmaker. He flies down to see Doug. He gives Doug a contract. Doug signs the contract. He becomes the producer. This guy, I guess his mom died, so he inherited a bunch of money, and he bought 2 high definition cameras before that was the thing. Most people were making video. But he had 2 really expensive cameras. I think they were like $6,000 a piece. And so me and Brett Erickson and Norm Wilkerson, we booked a tour. And I just told Jeff, that's what we're going to do. We're going to book a tour, and you just film everything, right? And that's what he did. He came down and he bought a van. and they filmed everything for like 3 weeks. He goes back to Seattle with 150 hours of film footage about edgy comics on the road, right? And then he starts editing up. He had to take that 150 hours and mash it down to an hour and a half. Yeah. And he puts together this fucking film. And it came out. And I mean, it took him a long time to work on it. It was this. And so when it finally came out, and here's the kicker of the whole story. The weird part of the story was that he put that movie out as an independent film. And, you know, we didn't have a distributor. And I was on Facebook and I was friends with one of Bill Hicks's friends, which was Kevin Booth. Now, Kevin Booth and Bill Hicks grew up together and they were best buddies. Kevin Booth was the guy that produced 2 of Bill Hicks's CDs that turned him into a household name, you know, Arizona Bay and Rant in E minor. So what happened was Kevin Booth goes, yeah, I'm looking for a film. I'm looking for films that don't have a distributor because I can recommend 3 films a year. And so I sent him a private message. I go, I've got a film. It's called The Unbookables. We don't have a distributor. And he's like, all right. So I sent him a copy of The Unbookables. He watches it, calls me back the very next day. I hook him up with the director, and they start talking. They re-edited the film with Kevin Booth's help, right? Yeah. And then Kevin Booth helped us get a goddamn distributor to where it got on Amazon Prime, Google Play, YouTube. It's iMovie, fucking Barnes and Noble. The DVD is everywhere.
It's all over.
And so now when I look back, my comedy hero, which is Bill Hicks, years later, I'm fucking working with Kevin Booth.
Full circle, right?
Yes. And here's the kicker. When Jeff Pearson signed the contract, I wasn't really, we had this contract with this huge distributor. Yeah. And I was on Facebook and they were talking about Bill Hicks's birthday. Oh, Bill Hicks was born, on the December 18th or December 17th or whatever. And so that was just something that was happening on Facebook that day. Well, Jeff, right around that time, he sends me an email. He goes, I finally signed the contract, James. And I look at it and he signed it on December 17th, which was Bill Hicks's birthday.
That's
and
cool.
I call him up. I go, did you know that was Bill Hicks's birthday? He didn't even know. It just randomly, he signed it. He signed the goddamn contract on Bill Hicks's birthday. And that was just one of those weird coincidences that to this day, I cannot believe.
Yeah. Makes it even more special and memorable, right? Like, I mean, that's actually really, really cool.
I know.
Because, for those of us who aren't mobile and we're not all over the place, you have a couple albums, right? A couple comedy albums. Where could we find that at for those who want to hear
you can find them on Amazon. Buy the MP3s off Amazon. I've got one of them is called Misogynist Clown, and the other is called Pander Monkey, and it's edgy comedy. I'll
make sure I put links to everything in the description.
Look me up on Amazon because I got 2 CDs on Amazon, and I'm kind of proud of Misogynist Clown. It's basically a CD about women and relationships, and you got to listen to it in order, because it's got shit in there. Like I've got old phone messages from ex-girlfriends and shit. And and my other CD, Pander Monkey, that's all politics, but you can also find it on Spotify. So it's on all the streaming services. It's on Amazon and also Amazon Prime, The Unbookables. Watch that movie.
Yeah, definitely. All right, man. We appreciate it so much. You've been an awesome guest. We would love to have you on anytime you want to. Even if you just want to sit in on a panel and just bullshit, we'd love to have you back on, man. It's been very, very cool.
Yeah, I hope you liked it.
I'm sure. Yeah, this is a great one. I really appreciate it. Guys, make sure you're checking out the Unbookables on Amazon Prime. Check out everything's in the description. It's Christmas time. It's getting close, guys. Comedy, what makes a better gift than comedy? Check it out, guys, and we will see you. turn this off real quick.
So when you turn it off, you turn me off too?
Yeah, so the recording, it just stops the recording
Okay.
process. If I could find it, there it is.
Thank you for joining us on the It's 420 Somewhere podcast. Broadcasting worldwide and brought to you by thedailydank.com. Check out our merchandise and amazing content. And follow us on all our social media. Now, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.